We're going live now to Rural Fire Service headquarters in Sydney with the latest on the bushfires across the state.
And in relation to the projections we had this morning, unfortunately those projections are coming to fruition. Again, can I stress to everybody, if you are in one of these fire zones, please adhere to the RFS advice. The single source of truth is the RFS advice. Please follow that advice to make sure you're in as safe a position as possible. I want to thank everybody for their cooperation. The feedback we're getting from the ground is that people have congregated, those who've chosen to stay behind in these fire zones have congregated in those areas that the RFS has indicated are safe places. We thank people for that and encourage that, but we're discouraging people from moving from where they are given the serious fire threat and the fact that we have so many fires now at emergency level. I will ask the Commissioner to provide detail for those specific parts of the state where the fires are particularly concerning, but I can say that the mid-40 temperatures plus the wind gusts mean not only is the situation exacerbated now, but it also means that when a southerly does come in, that change in weather will exacerbate existing conditions. We are in for a long night, and I make no bones about that. We're in for a long night, and we've still yet to hit the worst of it. And to date, fortunately, we've had no advice yet on any lives under threat or lost. However, it's a very volatile situation. We ask everybody to follow the RFS advice, to take cover if you're still in one of those fire zones, or to ensure that you're in one of the safe zones that have been designated in your community.
Thank you, Premier. As indicated, we've got 148 fires burning across New South Wales, and 12 of those fires are now at the emergency warning alert level. We've got another 8 fires at the Watch and Act alert level. The greatest concentration of the emergency warning fires are down in the southeastern quadrant of New South Wales. The fire furthest to the north, which is at emergency warning level, is the Greenwattle Creek fire, with the focus area on that fire out around the Wombian area, and the fire burning just to the near Joadja, to the northwest of Berrima, and to the northwest of the Old Hume Highway. So there's some work going on that fire, particularly with search and rescue machines to target anybody who might happen to be in the path of that fire. But that's where that emergency warning's at. Further over, closer to the coast, we've got the Currawan fire, where on the northern end of that fire we've got spotting activity crossing the Shoalhaven River in a number of locations, and burning to the east under some strong north and westerly winds, generally to the east, and that's the warnings are out there for communities west of Nowra, west of North Nowra and Nowra proper, and then effectively right down the south coast we've got a number of other fires burning at the emergency warning alert level, and that emergency warning alert level extends right out to fires as far west as around Gingellic, east of Albury, and around the Tumut, Adelong, Batlow areas, around through the southern slopes, also through the high country. So all of those fire grounds, all of those emergency alert messages are all about it's too late to leave. Your option for safety is to shelter in place as the fire approaches. As the Premier indicated, we are still seeing the worst of the weather to eventuate throughout the afternoon. We are going to see these strong winds and these hot temperatures continue throughout the balance of the day and right into this evening. The southerly change isn't expected to start moving through the southeast corner of the state until about 5 p.m. tonight, and it'll be fairly slowly moving up the coast and probably not impacting into the Greater Sydney area, for example, until somewhere close to midnight. So it's going to be a very long afternoon, a very long evening, and as that southerly approaches, it's going to be a gusty southerly. It's going to be a southerly. It's going to be a volatile southerly, with wind strengths expected to be up to 80 kilometres or more, gusting along the coastal strip. So a long, difficult few hours, a very dangerous set of few hours, given the amount of emergency alerts that are out there, and of course, we expect that could also deteriorate further this afternoon with more fires starting to spread and increase in activity. Any questions?
There's been a number of suspicious outbreaks in the west. Your thoughts on that?
Well, sorry, where do you mean?
To be exact, a number of grass fires have sparked cities west, namely around Badgerys Creek, started allegedly by quad bike. Are you disappointed by this?
So look, we have had a number of fires in the Sydney Basin, but the fire and rescue teams and RFS teams have got onto those pretty quickly and brought them under control, thank goodness. If anyone's got any reports of suspicious behaviour or any information, please dial Crime Stoppers, 1800 333 000. Police are always wanting the community to help them with information. Obviously, we've got very active police patrols, overtly so, but also covertly. So if there's anything out there that deems to be suspicious, please report it. You never know, that little bit of information you might have could be the piece of the jigsaw that the police are looking for.
We started off the day with about 2,500 firefighters. Have more been brought in? What are the numbers?
So we're up over 3,600 personnel committed to the fires at the moment, and there are hundreds of others pre-positioned and in staging areas in anticipation of any outbreaks of existing fires or indeed in response to any new fires, such as those we talked about in the Sydney Basin today.
Are there any direct threats to Sydney areas? We're hearing the Water Creek fire is also going down into Middleton. Is that true?
So it's fair to say that the greatest focus on the Greenbottle Creek fire at the moment, where the emergency alert messages are targeted, are out around the Wombian Caves area and the Joadja area, which is effectively northwest, if you like, of Berrima and probably west-northwest of Mittagong. Clearly, as the prediction maps identified this morning, we still have concerns for Mittagong and surrounds, and we can't rule out that becoming a threat or a concern in the coming hours.
What is being done to protect critical infrastructure like the Snowy Hydro?
So there's significant investment in all sorts of critical infrastructure. So particularly down through the southern slopes area and across the ranges. Not only have we got installations like the Snowy Hydro system, we've also got pretty significant industry-based infrastructure there, like sawmills and massive employment centres. They're being targeted very much with defensive strategies, whether it's aircraft, whether it's ground crews, whether it's machinery creating breaks. The same thing applies to a lot of our communications infrastructure and the critical utility supply, so power, radio communications, general communications for not just emergency services, but for the general community with broadcast towers. So lots of critical infrastructure gets factored into our strategies and our firefighting strategies around shoring up protection as much as we can ahead of these fire fronts bearing down on them.
Are any of the assets under threat at the moment?
Lots of them are.
Yeah. And what sort of assets, what areas are particularly concerned?
Generally what I described. So you're talking about towns and villages. You're talking about key employment centres and employment hubs that focus on industry. So, for example, the timber industry is very high down in the southern slopes. The paper mill the paper mill, the pulp mill factory. Lots of arterial power lines. You've got the hydro electricity scheme that's down there. You've got communications infrastructure. So there's lots and lots of infrastructure throughout the southeastern quadrant of the state that commands our attention and focuses resources and strategy to try and shore up as much protection as possible.
Shane, can I come back to reports of people lighting barbecues, not heeding those total fire bans, coming into dinner time now, particularly around Greater Sydney? What would you say tonight to those people?
It's against the law, and if people are doing it, they'll be prosecuted accordingly. There are conditions that allow for gas and electric barbecues in domestic dwellings under certain conditions, and also in designated parks and reserves. They are the only things that are allowed. We don't want people adding to our problem. We don't want people adding to the risk that is already significant for the people of New South Wales. If anyone sees people doing the wrong thing, again, please report it, and action will be taken. Decisive action will be taken straight away.
So they're fire initiated thunderstorms now, moving over the southeast corner of the state. What does that mean for these blazes that are already burning out of control?
We are seeing reports of pyroconvective type activity forming in relation to a number of these large fires. And what it means is you've only got to go back to the very confronting reality of what a huge thunder storm generated cloud from fire can mean, and that was the tragic death of Sam only on New Year's, the night before New Year's Eve, where a downburst or a collapse of that extraordinary event resulted in cyclonic type winds at the base of that fire flipping over a 10-tonne truck. That's the sort of volatility and the danger that exists with the sorts of pyroconvective columns that can be generated by these large-scale fires. So where that does happen, we issue very much warnings and alerts. A lot of these fire grounds, we've already seen firefighters being withdrawn for safety to shore up and focus on protecting as much as they can that might be coming in the path of that fire. Under these conditions, suppression is unachievable. The focus becomes saving life and saving property as much as we can.
Have there been any properties or homes reported to be lost?
Fortunately, at this stage, I'm not getting any reports of any significant infrastructure damage. But having said that, looking at where these fires are moving and where they're spreading, I'll be surprised if we're not seeing reports of damage and destruction before the night's over.
And I don't know whether either of you want to answer this, but the Australian Defence Force has 3,000 reservists coming in now. What does that mean to you guys?
So we've got the Joint Forces Command here, and we'll talk about that shortly. But effectively, we've assigned through Deputy Commissioner Warboys a principal point of location and contact to help coordinate and prioritise what needs might be forthcoming, particularly in the recovery space, where there can be help with clean-up and support for communities impacted by the fires, but also just furthering and continuing the already extraordinary effort and coordination that's gone on with the ADF now for months here in New South Wales. So if we need other things like logistics and support to the firefighting effort, then that can be provided. And I might just hand over to the Brigadier if he wishes to say something.
Thanks, Shane. Yeah, thanks for the question. So the number of 3,000 is more likely to be the national figure. They'll be called out, which gives the Defence Force the maximum flexibility in identifying people with the skills we think we need, and also gives the individual the maximum protection as well. But we'll be targeting those people with field engineering skills, logistics skills, etc., who we can put together in teams to assist the state services if required. And that'll be done over the coming weeks.
And also, we're hearing that you'll be opening bases no, that's not happening.
I'll probably let another person expand on this, but
that was just in terms of.
I'll let Commissioner Fitzsimmons talk about that. Yeah, I'll ask Commissioner to talk. And it's a really important point.
So two things, if I may, just supporting the Brigadier's comments. The one thing we've spoken to the Commonwealth about following the announcement this morning is to seek clarity and confirmation that the recall of reservists won't compromise all those men and women, whether they're volunteering or employed by agencies already heavily committed to the ongoing firefighting effort. The last thing we want is people removed from the firefighting effort to do their reservist activity, and the Brigadier and I have spoken about that, and there's very comprehensive databases and analysis where they will exempt people from that call-out who are already heavily committed, which is reassuring for us, because what we don't want to do in this announcement, in this pledge, is to compromise the ongoing firefighting effort. The other thing we learned about today through inquiries from the public was that there was an announcement about members of the community could access defence bases. We've sought clarification on that commentary, and the understanding is that the Prime Minister has announced that bases from Queensland through to Adelaide will be available for temporary accommodation for those that are transiting or caught out to provide relief and support for those that might be in the area. They can access those bases, is the advice as we understand it.
Final question?
Can I just ask one for the Premier? So there's been some reports around today, sort of unconfirmed reports, that New South Wales has rejected some offers of support from the federal government, and that's not true for any kind of support.
Not true.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Live news conference there from the New South Wales RFS. We heard Gladys Berejiklian, the Premier, saying there to please follow RFS advice. She called it the single source of truth, confirming that 12 emergency warnings remain in place across New South Wales. And she and also the Commissioner, Shane Fitzsimmons, saying that we are still yet to see the worst of the fire conditions, mid-40 temperatures around the state, and wind gusts as well. And when that southerly hits, which will start at around 5 p.m. and move very slowly, they say, up the coast, hitting Sydney at around midnight tonight, that will actually exacerbate conditions. Shane Fitzsimmons saying 148 fires burning across New South Wales, As we say, 12 emergency warnings, 8 are at watch and act level. He says it will be a very long afternoon and evening, a very dangerous few hours ahead was his quote, and expect things to deteriorate further this afternoon. He says that 36,000 personnel are committed to the fires, firefighters there on the ground and hundreds on standby. He did confirm there that towns and villages and key infrastructure are under threat, including the hydroelectricity scheme, which is in Cooma.